one up in a moment.
It's Edge Radio Australia. Good afternoon and welcome, of course, to the Greater World. The Shaved Monkey has just jumped out of the picture and he's run off to do something very technical. Find the any key, twiddle with a switch or something. I don't know.
It's that left-handed screwdriver.
It could be, mate. Fantastic to have you, though, next to me. David. Try Derek. Who the hell's David? And what have you done with Derek? Derek Whittaker here.
I have no idea, Brian. You tell me. Can I call you Brian for the next...
You know what? Absolutely. Yeah.
30 minutes.
I feel like I should be part of the Family Guy now all of a sudden. The Shaved Monkey is back, of course. He's just fiddled with the switch. How are we going there, Travis? I've gone all
So I know we can hear.
Right.
And I know SHAK can hear. So I know social media can hear.
Right.
The question is, I don't know if
did you put a line in? Okay. That's going to be very, very interesting.
Oh, the good news is we do have Damien here with us again today, so we'll be able to do a quick sound check with Damien to make sure they can hear. So that's all good. Hey, SHAK, can you give us a count to 10?
Yeah, I'm here.
We did a special.
I'm here, but
hey, Damien, can you hear SHAK?
Oh, I reckon he would be able to on the socials, but I'm telling you right now, I don't think he's going out to air on edgeradioaustralia.com or our app.
All right, that's right. While we're talking. No, most definitely they can hear SHAK on social medias.
That's great. That's fantastic.
That's great. That's all that matters.
Oh, of course. Poor old SHAK's now missing out on the radio, but never mind.
He's looking handsome again.
Well, let's get into the show.
So I've got a face. Obviously, I've got a face for TV, but not a voice for radio. That's what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
I don't know, mate. You sound dead sexy to me from here, but there you go.
I do try.
All right. Okay.
And Damien agreed as well. And we've also got Josh in again. So welcome, Josh.
I'll tell you what we'll do. Here's what we'll do, right?
No, you guys talk and I'm done fiddle.
You'll fiddle?
Because remember, people can hear
David.
SHAK. Or David and Goliath.
Yes, exactly.
So they can hear SHAK on social media. So if you're on Edge Radio Australia and want to listen to SHAK, just jump onto the Facebook.
Oh,
and hit the like and subscribe button while you're there.
Those people that are tuning into the radio on their car, I'll say something. There'll just be silence for them. And it'll be
That's right. That's right.
You're the ghost of SHAK.
Yeah, right.
With a shirt like that, SHAK, you're the ghost of SHAK, Christmas SHAK.
Oh, dear. Well, we're building as we go. So, the tech is always a little questionable around here, but we have the tech expert himself right now, as I say. I don't know what he's doing. He's playing with something. How about we jump into the show while he plays with his buttons? All right. Now, SHAK, have we still got you?
Aaron, you don't need to clarify what he's doing. He said he was going to go fiddle, so just leave it at that. The audience is going to assume what he's doing.
I'm very happy that he's having a fiddle, but it's off camera. That's the important thing, right? All right. He is right now, rather. Oh, my word. You're just, honestly, it's just like dealing with it. You took the phone jack. How about this? I will talk to this trained monkey over here. You introduce the show, mate. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about on the show today.
Would it help you guys if I phoned in for the voice? Derek, would it help if I rang the studio and you can grab my voice that way?
No. They've said no.
Okay.
Yep. Look, today I want to have a look at. We recently had a thing called a referendum, and
I heard about that.
From a money point of view, it was interesting to hear the response after it had. Now, Australia voted against the voice and a big resounding no, and it was interesting to hear from the. Right off the bat, a lot of the no camp was saying we've just wasted so many millions and millions of dollars on this referendum. Now, it's interesting to see how much it was cost. I was saying that, it was in the 364 million range. That was kind of what the government's saying. I believe others are now starting to report that it could be even as great as $450 million of taxpayers' money that went to that. And a lot are saying, look, the government was out of touch. In terms of what
I don't think it's that at all. Needed. I think it's very, very simple. I think that Anthony Albanese wished to leave a legacy, about himself. That's really what I think it was. Otherwise, if they really genuinely cared about Aboriginal people, they would have gone through legislation. Now,
sorry, go on. No, I was just going to say, what I found so interesting. We talked about it on the show on Saturday, is that there was a big proportion, we don't know how many exactly, but a big proportion of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community that actually didn't support this either. And they were all told that they were race traitors, and they were all given death threats, and their families were given death threats. Since the weekend, Jacinda Price's parents have been egged and spat on and things like that. Like, and this is happening by these young white liberals, not liberal parties, but young white, lefties. It's ridiculous. So
it is ridiculous.
I'm personally sick and tired of people telling me what's going to help people of color. Like, I'm okay. It's all right. Australia's not racist. We're a great country. I don't need you to help me. Thank you very much. I'm good without your help. And this was so interesting that some of the strongest no votes came from areas where they had the biggest proportion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in that electorate. So that was huge. I will just say very quickly, you can bowl me, knock me over with a feather. Fremantle, so far on the results, Fremantle did not vote for it. Perth did.
Yeah.
Curtin, my area of Dalgate, the Netherlands. It's very, very close.
SHAK, you racist.
Yes.
I don't know what's going on, Dalgate. The only thing I can put it down to is that Julie Bishop, who is somebody that I know, and I think that she's a wonderful person, but for some reason I can't understand, she was an advocate for the Yes campaign. And so maybe that was what took Dalkeith and Netherlands and Claremont and all those areas, over the line. But blow me over the feather, seriously. Curtin went for it, Fremantle didn't.
But I think I raised this issue because Fremantle's zonings got changed a couple of years ago. So it started bringing in Auburn Grove, Coburn. There's a whole heap of other areas that are now very tradie orientated.
Sure.
So I have a feeling that might be the reason, because Fremantle only makes up a very small percentage of the Fremantle electorate now.
All right. Well, Jarek, let's talk about the financial side.
The finance side is how much do you spend on a referendum? I mean, what's
the
appropriate? What is it? It's interesting that you were saying prior to this, Travis, in the lead up to the referendum, that a lot of the donations that were going to the Yes campaign were tax deductible.
Yes.
And that the No donations were not tax deductible.
They're not tax deductible.
Yeah, and there was even some misinformation about that as well. That's just, as I understand, it was cut and dry because one was being promoted by obviously the government, the Albanese Labor government, and the other one was effectively a fringe movement, the No vote. So they did not make it tax deductible. Quite disgusting. To me, that is just blatant corruption of the system.
Well, yeah, either way you look at it, which way if you said yes or no, it was politics, right?
Of course it was.
The whole thing was political. In relation to that. So I want to kind of talk and highlight the whole thing of, how much is how much to do this, because that was the whole response.
Let me jump in on that for a second and talk about blatant hypocrisy. First of all, if it's a fringe movement, so are lots of things. The Cat Haven is a fringe movement too, right? So, I used to donate to the Cat Haven. I used to go and give them biscuits and all sorts of things because I like cats. And, like any donation to a political cause should be tax deductible. Now, there was a hit piece done.
I support that.
There was a hit piece done on Jacinta Price about the 76,000 or 78,000, something like that she spent on flights and accommodation. Now, that wasn't put in any context. She's flying in from Alice Springs, which is a remote part of Australia. And even though Western Australia is arguably more distant, it's one flight from Perth across. But from Alice Springs, you've got to connect to another flight that you're going to come over. So her predecessor, who was actually in the Labor Party, I believe, her predecessor was actually the highest spending parliamentarian as well. But they've done this hit piece on her. But I've just heard a report from Sky News, and I'm not going to verify this because I don't know if it's true or not, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised. Travis's favourite airline, Qantas, apparently let all the Yes campaign advocates fly around the country free.
For free. Yes, that is confirmed. That was on the Sky News. It is absolutely true.
Now, this happening at a time when flights were, for a lot of people, the prices of flights were inaccessible. I remember being quoted $4,500 to fly in business class from Perth to Sydney. Now, okay, I can afford that. I didn't end up paying that, but I can afford that. But, most people can't. And I saw economy tickets going as high as $1,500, which is just totally inaccessible to a lot of people. In the meantime, they're flying all the Yes campaigners around the country free of charge. What's the justification for that? And as a shareholder of Qantas, when exactly does shareholders get consulted about these political donations?
So I don't think they do, because people like Alan Joyce. So I've got to be really careful. I got so used to calling him by another name. He's a extremely powerful little leprechaun who pretty much tells the Qantas to go jump, and they do anything he says. Same with politicians. So I'm just on the ABC News website. They're saying that the referendum cost $450 million. But there was an article on, obviously, Facebook, which everyone knows is true and accurate, saying that it was $650 million. So whether that's a typo or not, I have to double check. But they haven't done the final costings for the referendum yet. And I highly doubt that includes things like the flights from Qantas, which were done at no charge. So in Australia, that if you give a service without a charge is considered a donation, and you still got to put a monetary value to it. So I don't think Qantas has done all that yet.
And it'll be a tax deduction. So the taxpayer, in part, will be footing the bill for that as well.
Well, they'll be putting the bill for absolutely everything. So this is a huge amount of money that was just... I'm really glad we all said no. I think the whole context behind this is full of shit. I'm not going to pull punches on this. I think it was stupid. It was terrible. It was a massive waste of taxpayers' money. And I think half the reason why it failed, at the moment, we have major cost of living issues going on at the moment. So why are we spending like an insane amount? I think it's the education budget is like $1.08 billion a year. Why are we spending half of our education budget, which is another industry like in Australia that's severely lacking at the moment? Why are we spending half of their yearly budget on a referendum that really isn't needed, when everything that they're asking for, there's already laws or sections in the Constitution that will allow for that to happen?
It's a fascinating thing, even aside of the referendum side, that the political donation space is really weird in my view, because there's always strings attached, right? You want to vote for me? I want your vote. Fine, here's a donation. Now rule in our way. That's how it comes across, and you get a tax deduction for the benefit of it as well. And I think it really comes into question this highlighting this whole issue of what's the future of political donations, or even just spending on asking when is it legitimate for a government to go, right, we need to hold a referendum. This is something that really should be debated, when the actual community has indicated in this last referendum, this is not an issue that we're so concerned about. It's more the bureaucrats in Canberra that's been on their radar.
The vote showed exactly that. All of Australia was 60-40 for the no's, but yet Canberra was 60-40 for the yes. So it just shows how out of touch Canberra actually is. This is quantifiably proven that Canberra has no idea what this rest of Australia is going through. The referendum I would love to see happen in Australia is a referendum towards a Bill of Rights. Should Australia have a Bill of Rights, and what should it look like? I think that's a much more important referendum to have.
No, we actually had one, I believe, and it was and we turned it down, which again just totally surprises me. I don't understand it. Just like the Northern Territory had a referendum about becoming a state, and the people who live in the Northern Territory voted against themselves, voted against them having statehood, which just I can't understand. But then I don't understand a lot of things when it comes to the Australian apathy towards self-governance and self-reliance. But I will say I just don't know what to make of this whole thing, when we know that a big portion of I don't know why we're using the term First Nations, or we've imported that term from Canada. We'll go with that for the moment. Why such a big portion of the First Nations people actually didn't want this. They actually said no. They had some real problems with it. They weren't listened to. They were ridiculed and called names. Now the vote has come in, and again, in those areas where they are the most represented, they had some of the highest no turnout in those electorates. And yet they're going to fly the Aboriginal flags at half-mast and have a week of silence.
Isn't it great? Politicians are not shut up for a week.
Well, it'd be great. They should have like a whole lifetime of silence, but fly the flags at half-mast. Well, hang on a second. If you're Warren Mundine or Jacinta Price or any of the other, heaps,
80% that voted no,
thousands or millions of Aboriginals that voted no, why you don't want your flag flown at half mast, you might actually consider this to be a success. So on whose authority is the flag being lowered to half mast?
You're 100% right. There is no authority on it, and they've just taken liberties. Sorry, I had to slip that word in. They've taken liberties with what you believe because they can, and there's no one there to audit what they're actually saying. I personally think Australia's in a massive amount of debt. There's heaps of industries that are extremely struggling. I think last time I checked, there was 30,000 homeless people in WA alone, and there's something like I've heard 150,000, I've heard 120,000 people that are homeless around Australia. We've got major issues, especially with the Aboriginal Heritage Act in WA, making it extremely hard for property developers to actually make properties to be released for people to live in. Why are we wasting so much money on something that legitimately no one wanted? We've just proven that is not going to change anything. And they've had the funding, the legislative control, and the communications for the last 25 plus years. Like, it was totally unjustifiable whatsoever. So I have no idea what Albanese was even thinking.
But I don't think the money should have been spent. I'm not going to draw the connections. I don't like when people do that. We shouldn't have done this when we have these other problems. So if we didn't have these problems, then we should have spent the money. No, the money shouldn't have been spent regardless. Even if we had a budget surplus, nobody was homeless, we had a well-funded education health system, and there was no issues, we lived in some utopian Australia, we still should have spent the money. It was a waste of money. It was a waste of taxpayers' resources. But I'm not against the idea of having more direct democracy, actually, like they have in Switzerland, where matters are brought up. And normally they're brought up at the election, right? So here are the things that you're faced with. And so you elect your party, but then when it comes to individual issues, you can actually vote directly on them. And that in Switzerland can be anything from taxes to how healthcare should work, to how immigration should work, etc. So that people have a much greater say in how their government actually operates. And I think that that's a great idea. If very interesting what you're saying, Joshua McCurry saying the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage rules haven't been rolled back like Roger Cook said he was. But there's another thing. When was there a vote on that in Western Australia?
It was done at the 2021 state election when everyone bent over, took it up the back pipe, and voted in Mark McGowan with like a 90% success rate.
People voted for the Labor Party. Now, we can agree or disagree on Labor Party, Liberal Party policy, but this was a major change to how Western Australia is going to work. And that's what I'm talking about. I think direct democracy, not necessarily referendums, because you're going to be referendumed out, but you can put this on the ballot paper as a specific question. Why isn't that happening? Maybe it should, because what we're saying is government gets into power and they all of a sudden think they've got a mandate to do whatever the hell they want to do. Meanwhile,
I think that's the problem there.
The healthcare system in Western Australia, I mean, because I haven't been there for a while and, moved back to Sydney, and then so every time I come back to Western Australia, and I know a lot of people that rely on the health service, and they talk to me about their waiting lists and what's going on, and I look into it, I think, what the hell is going on? Well, what is going on in Western Australia? You can't get your healthcare system right, but yet you can go and blow all this money on all these other things. And at what cost? It's not just the taxpayers' cost. Those farmers, most especially the farmers in Western Australia, that have to try to navigate the ACH rules, absolutely horrendous. I'm actually surprised, as was Stephen, that Western Australia didn't vote even stronger no than they did. I think it's at 64%, but I'm surprised it's not actually even stronger.
So there's a really cool, because we're seeing a few people here that we haven't actually seen on any of these shows before. So Michelle, I just want to say good day to you. Thanks for tuning in. There's a couple of interesting points here as well about the referendum has pushed people. Do you think the referendum has pushed people to believe politicians even more? Personally, obviously you lose things in the text, but that's a very, very interesting comment.
Bring the messages up so we can bring them up on air.
Okay, I'll have to hunt through it again. But the other one that's right here in front of me is, does Albo survive this?
I don't think so.
I don't think he will, but I kind of hope he does, because it's one of those things like if he runs out the next federal election, there's a lot better chance that Labor's going to lose some seats, and I can't see anything bad in that.
I don't think he will, because politics, politicians, they want to be in power. And to be fair, who wouldn't want to be the Prime Minister? If you're in politics and you have the opportunity to go for it, you'd go for it, right? You'd throw anybody under the bus. So if you're Tanya Plibersek, whose policies I really, really don't like, and just the way she comes across in Parliament, remember she used to scream across the dispatch box. But if she's got the chance to become the Prime Minister, she's going to go for it, right?
Yep.
I think the Labor Party will push him out. And really, it was a humiliating defeat. It was suggested to me many times that he actually called off the referendum. He didn't do that.
Multiple times.
He must have known, you're not answering the questions. The thing is that they're trying to describe this as though it's confirmation Australia's racist. But the thing is that originally Australians were like, yeah, okay, that sounds good, because Australians are pretty easygoing and they're pretty fair-minded. They don't want to see people having some substantial disadvantage or not being recognised. So originally it was 60-40 in their favour. And they've absolutely alienated this huge part of the electorate. Now, Anthony Albanese hasn't personally done this, but that side, that yes side, telling people that they're racist, they're dinosaur. What did Ray Martin say? You're either a dinosaur or a dickhead. Well, thanks.
Dickhead or a dinosaur.
Yeah,
dinosaur with a dickhead.
You're so knowledgeable, are you? I mean, all these insults and condescension that has happened, and I don't really think that Anthony Albanese can come back from that. And almost every member of the Labor Party cabinet, every one of those electorates just about, have voted no in big numbers. And Linda Burney, especially, the minister, she should step down as well. There's not only did her electorate not vote for it, but a big part of the Aboriginal community are upset at what she's done in her handling of this. And as for Anthony Albanese saying that that reconciliation is still on the table, that reconciliation is still something that we should focus on, etc., we're not going to have another referendum about this until all of us are well and truly retired. Well, we had a referendum when I was a teenager about becoming a republic. We probably won't have another one for at least another 20 years that I can see.
We don't have one, that's for sure.
There seems to be more interest in us becoming a republic, but I don't know that for a fact. There just seems to be more interest in that. But we're not going to have one for a long time. The chances of this issue being brought up in front of a referendum again is not going to happen for a very long time.
All right, gentlemen, time for a quick break. We'll be back really soon. It's Edge, Radio Australia.
All right, so if I can hear the music, that means they can as well. Now,
can they hear me on
still
air?
Hear us?
Yeah, and I can hear
yeah,
the
we're
music.
still on air.
No, but can they hear me on air?
You're on the socials, mate.
You're on social media.
But can they hear me on air now? Can they hear me on the radio now?
No, they can only hear you on social, so that's what we need to fix.
You'll need to fix that.
And what we're going to do, Shaq, is for the replay that goes out on Sunday, we'll use the audio from online, all right?
Okay.
All right. Travis, can you fix this?
Yes, you guys have to put cans on because I'll go through the headphones. The other option is I'll just plug that.
Right, well, let's go with the headphone on here.
Yeah, I'll put cans on. You got to plug it in. Sorry, guys, we're just fixing up. Yeah, plugging it to the. All right. Okay, Josh can hear music, so the music that's coming through there. That's right. I'll just go change one of these settings.
Hey, we're just too
We should talk about my favorite person. We should talk about my favorite person on your own. You guys froze up on me and now I can't hear you. I've got no sound. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? If you can you thumbs up? Because I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm just fiddling with the
Okay, cool.
settings on this side.
Right, cool.
I want him. He's going through the deal. I don't want to go through the deal. I think so. All right, Shaq, can you give us a count to 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Where's the other razor? All right, try again, Shaq.
What do I do on track? What trial? 6 or 7, 7?
But now we've got the music, which I don't know why we've got the music. Hey Josh, can you still hear the music?
Says I am the doctor you've looked up to. I come across the horizon, drop my love on you. I know the W-O-O-O-O-O, yeah, oh. Watch out! The W-O-O-O-O, yeah, oh. See you later. We dance underneath the radar. We live underneath the power. When you live underneath the radar, that's the way that you're ever gonna get by. We kiss under the searchlights, and we live under the power. We live under the radar. That's the way that you're ever gonna get by. So get here. Chop.
Curious about cryptocurrency and want to learn more? Orange Brick Road offers expert crypto consulting and online courses to help you understand the exciting world of crypto. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced crypto user, Orange Brick Road can help you gain the knowledge and confidence you need to succeed. Take the first step towards mastering crypto with Orange Brick Road at orangebrickroad.com.au. Yesterday was the best day to learn crypto. Today is the second.
There's dancing behind movie scenes, behind the movie scenes. Sakirani, she's the one that keeps the dream alive from the morning past the evening to the end of the light. Brimful of Asher on the 45, well, it's a brimful of Asher on the 45. Brimful of Asher on the 45, well, it's a brimful of Asher on the 45. And singing, illuminate the main streets and the cinema aisles. We don't care about no government.
Oh, I said you play Facebook straight there.
That's what I want.
Well, when you disappeared to play with this all that's what I thought you were doing. Yeah, Josh, we're not meant to have the music. We're just on copyright strikes for this one. We're licensed. And every time they nail us, we put a claim in and they go, oh, okay, you can have it. What we do? My understanding is once we get 1,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel, we get a YouTube manager, and then they can actually flag our station as fully licensed, and then we just won't get copyright strikes. So there is a way we can actually change the mic in the studio to some music. As if you hit
Jack too drunk and the bowling boogie, the heavy hits and the cheesy music all on the radio. 45, 2 in 1. 45.
Press. No, okay. Just doing it anyway. And was this Liam Henry gone for the future second Frio pillaged again? Oh, the footy. See, this is one of the reasons why the Dockers will never win a premiership. And yes, Dockers supporter. I know we are going to get absolutely destroyed in every single premiership. I don't think they'll win a premiership in my lifetime. I can't even watch the football anymore. It's so disappointing.
Right.
It's like Aaron not watching the World Rally Championship.
I can't hear the music in my hands. So it's supposed to happen.
What was that? Oh,
I can't hear the music.
Oh,
You
does
can't?
that plug work?
I can hear it.
The music's finished, hasn't it? Because I'm not getting it now anymore either.
have you got it?
Now I can't hear you guys.
Is that it?
I'm not getting music anymore.
Now we're going live in 10 seconds.
Okay.
We might have a problem with Derek, because if you can't hear Shaq.
Derek, can you hear me?
No, if you can't hear
Edge
Shaq.
Radio Australia, Malloy with you, of course, as we get into more of the greater wealth.
You just love talking over the music, don't you?
Well, it's kind of my
Well, we
thing,
just
mate.
spent 5 minutes doing that anyway.
That's
So
exactly right.
now,
Why
Derek,
stop now? Derek.
can you hear us?
No, not in
No.
the cans.
No,
but I can hear you
okay,
outside
well,
that.
Okay, we might have a problem.
Let's
with this one
remove you on the
because-
cans then. It's all good. Well, I will mention the fact that Travis was behind playing with the computer. So anything could happen, really. Yeah.
It's all good.
Now let's jump into the show, though. Let's talk about some issues that you want to bring to the fore.
Look, it's really interesting what's happened with Australia's e-safety office. Stories just come out, and this is making international headlines.
Mhm.
Back in February, they sent out a memo to a lot of the
A Nemo?
a memo, not an emo, to X, which was formerly Twitter,
Sure.
as well as Google, TikTok, Twitch, and Discord. And these notices were basically specific questions for the companies to answer about how they were handling child exploitation content that was being put on their platforms.
Okay.
What they've come back and done is they've actually issued a fine for Twitter, saying that
Pocket change, by the way.
many of the questions left were entirely blank, and that they were broad. Google has been issued a formal warning for giving generic responses to specific questions.
Okay.
So it's interesting to see one on the relationship that they have with big tech, our Australian government. You'll also recall that when Facebook decided to unlike Australian media back in the day, that it was a breakout for 24 hours or so.
Yeah, it was only a very short one.
yeah.
but quite effective.
It was kind of flexing its muscles,
Yeah,
saying, who are you to tell me what to do here? It's been a slap on the wrist for this.
Slap on the wrist. Come on.
No,
They
no,
squirted them with some water.
No, for X, the formerly known as Twitter. It sounds like the artist formerly known as Prince. That's why I'm thinking about this. 610,500 Australian, which is about 380,000 US, which is not a huge amount for a big
Lunch
tech company
money,
like
maybe
that.
at Twitter.
Not even. That's the change in the couch.
But given that, it's like, hey, please take this seriously.
Yeah.
Because we can do more. So it's this really interesting tug of war between big corporates. And to put it in perspective, you think, well, it's just a social media company. When you actually look at the volume of money that goes through Wall Street every single night to trade these big tech companies, it is huge. Okay. These are the ones that control the NASDAQ. These are the ones that control the Dow Jones going up and down and basically control the market. So it is the David versus Goliath.
Of course it is.
In an economic term, when you actually look at the GDP of Australia, which is quite tiny compared to the rest of the world, we're just over 1%. So yeah, watch that space as far as big tech is concerned. But I'd also put into question, like, international business, you have to respect the laws of the other educational companies. And this is one that when you go on a website now, you have to accept cookies.
Yes, you do.
Right. And that was because of a ruling of the EU.
Okay.
Right. They were basically insisting that people need to know that they're being tracked with their information.
Okay.
So where does it go from here as far as Australia is concerned, and also big tech? I'll just throw that to you guys at the moment.
Well, look, to me, the fine given.
It's not a fine.
Well, no.
It's a donation.
It is a donation. Look, I agree with the principle of fact of obviously we don't want child exploitation happening on any forum whatsoever.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's a very positive sign. But, yeah, these things have to be made in a worthwhile way. So not a small fine. And it has to be maybe ways that would actually really genuinely affect them, like a restriction on their advertising or something like that. I don't know. I'm kind of throwing ideas out there. But something meaningful.
Hey, SHAK, what do you think a realistic fine for these big tech companies should be?
On this issue, nothing. I don't think it should be fined at all.
Okay. How would you deal with it, mate? What's your thoughts?
Well, firstly, these companies they're not doing it themselves, right? They're not promoting this material themselves. We all know that this is absolutely disgusting and horrible material. We also know that there's been an absolute explosion in this material being traded online, from what we hear from law enforcement agencies. Sure. It is a crime and it needs to be investigated. But I'm just going to slightly pivot away from the question for a moment. If you guys remember, there was that young Canadian girl who was bullied online, and she ended up sending revealing photographs of herself to this person online. And he threatened, if she didn't do certain things, that he would expose her to her family and friends and all the rest of it. And in the end, she ended up killing herself, which was such a great tragedy. As a result of that, there was a call for tech companies to step in to minimize the harm caused to young people. And what did they do? They responded by having, hate speech rules and anti-bullying provisions online and all of those sorts of things that we complain about, because we say they should just not be involved in this in the first place. Now, when it comes to this issue, they have some sort of algorithm that Google has and many of the other big tech companies have, that I don't understand the technical aspects of this, but apparently that they have like this algorithm that can determine points on a picture, so that when you send pictures through the email, it actually scans those pictures and then flags it if those points are likely or have something in common with points of reference that they have in their database. But that effectively means that the tech companies are reading our emails in some way.
Everything.
So is that what we want? So what the government is doing here is they're saying to the tech companies, it'd be one thing if they were saying to the tech companies, upon being made aware that this material is there, you need to take it down. That's fine. But if you're actually saying to the tech companies that you need to police this yourselves, well, that's really the government's job. And so to hold the tech companies responsible, what should they be doing then? Well, they're supposed to be, what we hope is that they're a company that's just running a website in which people communicate and send pictures and send text messages and all that sort of stuff. So if we're going to say that we want you to regulate this, well, then we have to accept that the tech companies are going to have to be more involved and monitoring all of our communications to make sure that this stuff isn't out there. And, based on our prior experience since September 11, every time government has tried to infringe on our rights and take them away, they've used these two excuses. One, the protection of children, which we all agree with, and two, the protection of our security to get rid of terrorism. Those have been the two reasons given for their massive encroachment on our civil liberties. So again, what do we want the tech companies to do? If you're going to find them, obviously you think that they're not doing enough or that they should do more, right? So what do you want them to do that you'd be happy with?
There's another point that SHAK's just raised up here as well, because you got to remember platforms like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube were always platforms. Now, if they have to come through and start censoring and editing and modifying posts as they're coming up, there's an argument that they're now a publisher. They're no longer a platform. So then the if someone does put something up that is terrorist related and all that, the publisher it's argued that the publisher then has legal liabilities for those posts. So effectively what you're saying is that these platforms cannot be platforms anymore. They have to be publishers.
So grey because, okay, if you put government in charge of that, then you've got the encroachment on your privacy from government.
And then you can take it even further. There's supposed to be free media in America.
Yep.
Under the Chat can tell me which part of the freedoms of was it? Mental blank.
First Amendment.
Yeah, the media is supposed to be free from interference from the government. All of a sudden, if they are a platform, are they then considered media? And should the constitutional rights of the free press, come into play for Facebook?
Well, we saw, of course.
No, but hang on. But don't sort of distort the issue there. First Amendment says you've got free press. There are limits, and certainly the promotion and distribution of this type of material would not be allowed if CNN or Fox News or something was to put this out. That would not be okay, right? They wouldn't be able to hide behind the First Amendment. But again, I think the issue is, if we're fighting the companies, that means that we're saying the companies have some responsibility here. And I'm saying, well, what do we expect then that those companies should do? If Edge Radio sets up a forum online and we own the forum, not where you guys own that forum, and one of our users posts something that they shouldn't have posted, which is illegal, should Edge Radio be held liable for that? Or should Edge Radio simply be required, upon being made aware that is on their platform, to report them to a law enforcement agency?
Well, to me, it's the latter. It's the latter.
So I think if you're going to do that, then when you say, well, how much should they be fined? Well, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want the tech companies to do?
Yeah. But then you also look at, again, this is the point I was making, not saying that free media should be allowed to post anything they want. If we have to censor what's put into the chat platform, are we still considered a platform, or are we then considered a publisher?
Yeah, look, whenever you've got an open forum, obviously you're subject to so many different people's opinions. They don't necessarily become the opinions of the publisher, in my personal opinion.
Correct. So if it is still considered an open platform, and I was watching one of the lawyers talk to a woman, and he turns around and says, right, if I, as the judge, have a gun, I'm cleaning the gun, and I shoot myself, who's at fault? Is it the person that made the gun or the person that shot themselves? It's the person who shot themselves is at fault doing it. Whether it's an action intentionally, whatever, it's their fault. So the same sort of thing. If you get yourself pregnant, is the person with the bits that got you pregnant, is it his fault that he got you pregnant, or do you need to take responsibility for your actions? Again, going to this situation here,
hang on.
Is YouTube responsible for what gets put onto their platform, or is it the person that actually posted it? Is better identification for the people using the platform more required? So if someone does post something not allowed, you can go, right, this is a user, this is what they posted, then give that to the law enforcement, let the law enforcement deal with it.
Well, I think it's gone too far. The Twitter files have revealed that the FBI were looking at people's social media accounts, right? And asking and interfering with people's questioning of, vaccines and COVID and all that sort of thing, and saying, is this legit or not? They were questioning, as people were saying, the science. And yet people were going, hey, the science could be wrong here.
It has been in the past.
Yeah. And so I think, we've seen that extreme go. Yeah. Is that against First Amendment's rights as far as the US Constitution is concerned? I believe it was.
I believe it is. I believe it is. But that's exactly the issue I'm talking about. If you say to tech companies, you have an obligation to stop the spread of misinformation. You have the obligation to protect the health and safety of the users, etc., etc. You need to require everybody to register and prove who they are before they can go on platforms. That wasn't the internet that we grew up with. When we grew up, before we had all this, we had old IRC chat rooms and IQ, what it was called, IQ something. Yeah, we were going on to those, and nobody knew who you were. So now all of a sudden we're saying, look, everyone needed to know who they are. There's no more anonymous stuff. You can't just go on and be a troll and just be an idiot, which lots of people, for whatever reason, find some fun in doing. And we're going to hold tech companies responsible for it. Well, then what do the tech companies do? The tech companies then have to become more adherents to big government. So the big government says, this is what we want everyone to do. We want them to get a vaccine. Of course, the tech companies are going to say, absolutely fine, no problems.
Yeah.
The government says everybody has to get a vaccine. We're going to promote that. And we're going to take off any information that contradicts that, which totally circumvents the whole reason why the internet was there in the first place, which was that people could have discussions, open discussions, and communicate, debate, talk about all these sorts of different issues. And mostly it was an anti-government type thing. It was a democratization of information. Originally, the internet was not something that people were going to make money out of. It was just a way for people to share information about all sorts of things. Now, if we try
cryptocurrency of information,
wasn't the internet created by the US military?
Yes, exactly. When the internet first started being a thing accessible to all of us, the whole point was that one of the advantages was we could communicate with people far and wide very freely and often in criticism of government. Now, if you start making the tech companies, be responsible for all this stuff, we lose all of that freedom, and now the tech companies are just an extension of the government of the day. I have a big problem with that. It's not because I think that this stuff is great. I think it's awful what's going on, but I don't think this is a solution that's going to solve that problem.
And it's not just restricted to big tech. We're seeing this rollout happen to other organizations that are doing the policing on their clients now. For instance, the whole know your client rules, what the banks are insisting upon, what the lawyers are now having to do, the accountants, the amount of questions that accountants are now required to ask their clients, it's just ridiculous.
It is, absolutely. It's 1984.
Yeah, exactly. We want government out of our business. If you commit a crime, fine, the government should prosecute you. I think that's absolutely correct. Government should prosecute you. And government should do
perhaps just as literal, just a simple, nothing simple, but a system of mandatory reporting of crime from a social media company. But then, of course, what is defined as a crime, and we go on and on and on. But I mean, certainly they're not negotiable. But they're not negotiable. So things like, child abuse and pedophilia and all that sort of disgusting stuff. That, to me, that all should be mandatory reporting.
Well,
but it already is. It already is mandatory, right?
Yeah.
If you're aware of it, it already is mandatory, including even if you're not a tech company. If you're aware of this, if you're aware of a child in danger, or you've come across this sort of material, you're supposed to report it. What we're doing here is we're requiring them to do more, and that more is ultimately going to mean more monitoring of us. Yeah. And what government does, this is how they start. They start by saying, we're doing it for your protection or for the protection of vulnerable people in our society.
For your health, you'll do this.
When you take that to extreme levels, when they were having the inquiry about the January 6th peaceful protest or insurrection, depending on which side of politics you want to be on, okay, when they had that inquiry in Congress, the media footage was cut from some tech platforms because of the spread of this information. So people couldn't even hear the arguments that were going on in Congress in the United States. I think that every person in America should be able to see what the government's doing at all times and on all platforms.
Otherwise, you're defeating the whole purpose of a public gallery.
That's right. Transparency needs to be first and foremost.
And one thing I do think Australia's got right in regards to the public galleries and all that is parliamentarian privileges. When you're on the floor of Parliament, anything goes. And I think that's something that they did get right.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
well, I don't know if that's
and there's
the case,
no legal ramifications.
Think of what happened with. Now, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name now, but okay, the gentleman who was sued, the senator who was sued.
Weinhelm.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
No, but the difference is he made the accusations on the floor of Parliament.
Yep.
Then he went and repeated it on multiple media platforms.
Okay. Now
so,
that
prime example, Mark Latham at the moment has made a few accusations against One Nation, but he refuses to repeat them outside of Parliament, so One Nation can't take any action against him.
Gotcha.
He's making some really nasty accusations against One Nation.
So politicians then, if I'm understanding you correct, that you're okay with this. So politicians can hide behind parliamentary privilege in order to say things that if any of the rest of us was to say, we'd be sued over. And we're okay with that.
I'm still not okay with that.
No, I am, and here's why.
Right.
Because my problem is with politicians sucking up to power brokers behind the scenes and not representing. Politicians need to represent the people. They need to have an open platform where they can say what the people are thinking without the fear of persecution and misinformation, lawsuits, and all that sort of shit. So if you get the right, let me finish, Shaq. if you get the right politicians and the people who vote for the correct people to represent them, they should be able to sit on the floor of Parliament and say things like Brian Burston, who has now paid out a lawsuit, so I can say this without getting sued, sexually assaulted his staff members without getting sued for defamation, which Brian Burston did to Pauline Hanson when she accused him of sexually assaulting his staff members.
Right.
Now, should Pauline Hanson, if she said that on the floor of Parliament, should she be persecuted for representing people who have been assaulted by members of Parliament? And should she be censored for standing up for people who have been hard done by and done the wrong thing to?
You accuse me of being a lefty, so let me just make sure that I.
So you got to remember, I'm a free speech absolutist. Like,
that's right.
So I think there needs to be a platform.
Right. So your idea of being a free speech absolutist is to say that the person who represents the people should have the ability to freely express their views, but the people themselves shouldn't have the ability to freely express their views. I'm not saying you should take away parliamentary privilege. I'm saying you should extend that privilege to everybody.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that one, SHAK. And that's why we need a Bill of Rights in Australia to have absolute free speech.
Okay, in the US, right? Okay, there's the absolute, that is the country that has exploited being litigious more than anyone.
Actually, no, Australia's worse than the US.
Yeah, I know just statistically. But I mean, okay, the famous, McDonald's cup of coffee, you're not going to carry.
Yeah, that's just
people
stupidity.
But people tend to sue in America, okay? Which is it's a horrible shame. But is it a consequence of this free speech? Do you know?
So I think that's the problem with the legal justice system, not in the free speech, because the company in question should have been able to say, right, you know what? They've gone through the bullshit court system. They should have their and this is another thing that I think should happen. I think justice should be free. I don't think there should be a charge to be going to courts. And I know the courts are going to get bogged down with a whole heap of petty crimes and all this sort of shit. But people need to be able to have, like I said, the ability to defend their case. And it should be able to defend their case in a court with a jury of their peers. So in the McDonald's case,
justice, how much can you afford to buy?
Exactly. So there shouldn't be a charge for it. So in the McDonald's case, McDonald's should have been able to go, right, I want to put this to common sense court, or call it whatever you want. I don't give a shit. They should have had a jury of about 10 people or 20 people in there. They say, look, she asked for an ultra hot coffee. She got it. She poured it on herself. Now she's suing us. Who's at fault here? The person who followed instructions to make the ultra hot coffee, or the person that spilled it on themselves?
Hold up. With that McDonald's case, and I'm not here to defend McDonald's, because, by the way, McDonald's is open 24 hours a day, are always closed between like 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning for cleaning. And then you go there and say, well, you're not really open 24/7 then, are you? And they're like, no, we are open. I'm like, but you're open in what way?
We're always open, but we're not always
closed. So I can't come into the restaurant and I can't order a burger. So in what way you're open? Like, well, you're welcome to like drive through the drive-through. I'm like, and what? And then just talk to you. I didn't come here to have a conversation. So I'm no defender of McDonald's. In that particular case, as I understand it, the McDonald's were warned on repeated occasions that the coffee that they were making were too hot and was in breach of the standards or regulations or whatever. And so when she then burned herself and obtained injuries as severe as what they were, it was as a result of the coffee machines being too hot, which McDonald's was repeatedly warned about, and that's why they settled or had that judgment against them. But
let me ask you a question then. Is that McDonald's fault or the manufacturers of the coffee machine who's had the settings too hot, or the maintenance person who's in charge of maintaining the coffee machine?
If it's McDonald's fault in the first place, if McDonald's thinks it's the manufacturer's fault, they should enjoin the manufacturer into the complaint. But the consequence, though, and this is why we have such ridiculous rules now, the consequence is that for our health and safety, you can't order an ultra-hot coffee should you want one. So if you go out to a cafe or a restaurant and order a coffee, it's normally kind of lukewarm or, sort of just warmish. It's never really piping hot like you'd have at home. So, this is the consequence of this over litigious society, is that bit by bit our freedoms get taken away from us by companies trying to prevent themselves from being sued. And this is what, to come back to the tech question, this is what will happen if you start issuing big fines to the tech companies. What you'll end up doing is you'll end up taking away our ability to communicate freely without being constantly monitored by the big tech companies and government at the same time. And not just our government, but because we're going to be monitored by all these foreign governments. And when I just went to the United States earlier this year, I had to renew my ESTA, my visa waiver ESTA program. And one of the questions that were asked, which wasn't asked last time, was what are your social media profiles? I was gobsmacked. What difference does it make what my social media profiles are? It should just matter. Do I have a criminal record? No. Am I a terrorist? No. Like, you know.
They actually ask if you're a terrorist.
No, those are the questions. Are you a terrorist? Are you a known, international drug dealer? What? I mean, even if you were, you're not going to say yes to that, are you? But so they ask those questions. They ask if you're a criminal, which I'm obviously not. Presumably, they check that with the country that you're coming from. And then all of a sudden now they're asking for social media. What does my social media have to do with it?
It's got nothing to do with it, and they're just overreaching. So again, there's two arguments here. And they both boil down to how much of the government interference is going to be there. And as Derek brought up earlier, how far does this go into your finance side of things? And especially with misinformation. So there's a lot of people like Blue Sky Factory that do education side of things around finance. At what point do they then keep pushing this? Oh, no, that what you're teaching could possibly get someone into trouble. So therefore, that's now misinformation. You're not allowed to do it.
So
how far is this going to go?
So have I won you guys over? Because you guys all started saying the fines weren't big enough and it was a drop in the ocean, it was a slap on the wrist. So have I won you over that we shouldn't be holding the tech companies responsible?
No, you've won me over on that one. I actually agree with you. I just want to make sure that there is actually mandatory reporting of this disgusting stuff. Yeah. Simple as that. The reality is we could have a conversation for days on this, gentlemen, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to throw to Derek to wrap up the show, mate.
Are we over already?
Oh absolutely.
We have so many things to talk about.
It's all good.
Sorry, Derek.
Well, before we wrap up, let me just say it's been a great result for Australia and New Zealand. The referendum, well, I won't say that I think it's a great result, but that's apparently what everybody else thinks, because I'm not going to tell you how I feel. But the referendum was defeated, and Jacinda Ardern's party has been like, you're gone. In New Zealand.
It has in New Zealand as well. Well, why are we talking about this on a finance show? Politics is a big influence on finance. And of course, you can see that how businesses can run or can't run, as the case may be, as we've discussed today. I hope you've got something out of the greater wealth.
Absolutely, Era. I'm going to go out with respect. I think that's kind of, apt for the show today. Thank you very much. It's Edge Radio Australia.
Now, all right. Now, SHAK, you still there?
I'm here. I had to change where I was sitting because the sun has
press the button you just pressed.
I can't.
Why not?
It's going out to air, mate.
Oh, fine. It's all right. Aaron's changed all the settings.
No, Aaron.
Can you still hear the music?
Can you tell that he's a politician?
I can't hear the music. Are we still on air or are we off air?
Yeah, we're still on social media.
Oh.
There's been a heap of comments coming through. I don't know if you want to touch them before we wrap up.
Sure. Well, I was about to have a cigarette, but yes.
Yeah. That's your right, SHAK. You can do what you want. It's your body. You're smoking outside. You're not around kids, so it's all good.
Well, yeah, but I might get hit by the social media platforms for promoting nicotine or something.
Oh, but they're nicotine-free cigarettes, aren't they, SHAK?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're herbal cigarettes.
And you're in California, so they're like the purple sticky paint. No. Okay, here's one from Josh. It comes from APANet, which was created by APRA, which became DAPRA.
What came
a lot of
from
acronyms there. I know we've got a so if you see down the bottom, we've got scrolling on the screen, all our licenses come up.
Yeah.
So PPCA and APRA. I think Josh is actually talking about a different APRA because that's the one we have is Australian Performing and Recording Artists. So our fees go to musicians for their performances, and the PPCA is like the copyright for the actual lyrics that they've done. So my understanding, DAPRA, which one's that one? We're getting so many acronyms now.
Yeah, when it says it came from, because we're not sure what that's in context, what that's referring to.
Hang on, here we go.
APRA. No, ARPA. Okay.
ARPA.
So it's ARPA. I'm not sure when he says it came from, what came from. Is he referring to the fine? Is he referring to regulations? What's he referring to?
I think it is about the fine. So there's one of the earlier comments. Because we were chatting, I was running through things. The intranet. Oh, okay, the creation of the internet. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like originally it was a military thing, but I was talking about when we all started. Like you're my age when we started using the internet, and it started being like a thing, and you'd have the dial-up internet. Your parents could make a phone call, that sort of stuff back in those.
Yep.
It was sort of the Wild West, and personally, I think
You broke up a little bit then,
The
Shaq.
pre-Google days.
The funny thing was,
back in the days when we used internet, it was dial-up, right? And you'd be on the internet. Your parents could make a phone call, but it was the Wild West. You could do whatever you wanted, and it was, I think, in my opinion, it was better back then. Now everybody's sleeping around.
I was I would have been young, maybe 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
I think my battery's just gone flat. I was all of 12 or 13. I get home and there's this new computer in the lounge room because my brother's 9 years older than me. So he goes, "Oh, I've got a computer. We've got the internet. You've got glasses. You set it up." And like, I'm a kid. I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, so we got this computer working. We got it connected to the internet and all this sort of stuff. And you got to remember, this is like a 19-year-old male. So what's the first website he looks up? I'll leave it to your imagination. So yeah. Anyway. I'm just on quickly.
It's still the most popular subject on the internet, from what I understand,
and also the oldest industry in the world.
Yeah, the second oldest being politics, which pretty much the same as the first, really.
You're selling yourself out for a good time, so.
I can't really hear you very well right now, and also the visuals on my side are frozen.
Yeah, what happened is the battery went flat on the camera, so we should be up. Yeah, we're up again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just saying that is you sell your soul for a good time on either industry. So I'm just trying to think. There's a few other here about the Stephen James. Why are you debating this stuff about the government that is still sitting unlawfully in the beginning? They shouldn't be able. What is it? They shouldn't. I really need some new glasses.
They shouldn't be able to even be there.
So,
well, look, it's an unfortunate reality. I think at this stage in human development, we kind of need government, but I think that we should reduce their powers significantly.
Knowing WA, we've got a lot of common law sheriffs. Was it the 65 or 73 referendum? One of them where they put the Corporations Act in. The referendum got voted down. There's a lot of things. When you change from like the governing system we have now, you want to change to a republic system, you have to do an entire new constitution. So there's a big argument saying that when the referendum got voted down, the government still implemented the Corporations Act and a whole heap of other things. From my understanding of the original 1901 Australian Constitution, the things that have been enacted didn't need a referendum, so they were able to pass them through Parliament normally. I haven't had a chance to go through and actually look at what got passed, what was bills and whatnot. So my understanding at this stage that they are questionable, but they are legal.
Look, I think that we should enshrine in our Constitution something along the lines of a Bill of Rights. Yeah. And certainly we should do that. Certainly we should do that. Shaq. Yes. Certainly we should do that before we start making any kind of pathway towards becoming a republic. When that question was asked last time, the question was, well, okay, if we become a republic, then what? And right now, what rights you actually have are very, very unclear. They're hidden in statutes. And one of the questions, for example, is after we declared some independence from the UK, Australia was no longer able, or an Australian is no longer able to have a disagreement with the Australian government heard by the Privy Council.
Correct.
So the question is, do Australians have rights that flow to them from the Magna Carta? Are we essentially covered by, although it's not clear in the UK other than Magna Carta, are we covered by the freedoms that the UK is supposed to give its citizens or not? And nobody in this country can actually answer that question because it's not clear. Even High Court judges have said that's actually not clear. Well, I
Lauren
don't
covered it really well.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a very good position for Australians to be in. And in Western Australia, especially, it's always just bewildered me why people in Western Australia accept some of the bullshit that goes on. Like, let's just take COVID, for example. Western Australia said to the citizenry, use the QR codes, do all of that. It will not be used for any other purposes other than for healthcare reasons. And then the new police commissioner did use it to allegedly track criminals. And then he said, well, I'm not going to apologize for that. When he was asked, well, so you just lied to the people. He said, well, I'm going to apologize for that because I was trying to clean up the streets and, track criminals. No, that's
openly
not
abusing their rights. So
exactly.
he should have been up on abuse of office.
Well, and that's my point. It's not the point that you think that what you were doing was right or wrong or good or in the best interest or whatever. The issue is, should you have had that right to do that in the first place? And I would argue that no, the police commissioner shouldn't have. For the same reasons I don't think the police should be able to demand that you unlock your phone or your computer and give them your passwords without a warrant. No, I'm not doing that. But Western Australians seem to just accept it. I don't understand, especially considering that Western Australia voted to become a republic, took it to England, and England said, piss off.
Yeah. So my understanding, the Magna Carta can be used in Australia, but it's got to be in the High Court, which most Australians can't afford to go to in the first place anyway. So they've got to use, if there's something that, like the Mabo case, they reference the Magna Carta in that one. So they use it to lend weight to other arguments as well. So I think the whole lot's messed up. I personally, I am actually a Republican. I want Australia to be a Republican. I want Australia to be responsible for Australia. I don't like the fact that we've got other people, the Governor General is able to dissolve the government at any time. But I like the fact, my understanding in America, you can confirm this one for me, SHAK. So the Senate has power over one section of the government, then the next section has, it's sort of like a big circle, like each person has to answer to the other one. So if one form of government just goes totally corrupt, that the other form can actually call it to account.
Well, theoretically, yes. Theoretically, you've got the three branches of government, which is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Now, theoretically, that's the same system that we have here in Australia, by the way. We have an executive. We also have a legislature, which is the House of Representatives and Senate. And then we have the High Court or the judiciary. But if you guys remember, they tried to do a couple of things. The High Court knocked it back. This, I think, was under the last government, under the Liberal government. The High Court knocked it back, and so the government said, "Okay, we'll just change the laws."
Yeah, I think that there was one that I was really. This is one situation where I thought, the government, not the government, the structure actually had it right. It was the either bank bail-in laws or the cash ban. I can't remember which one it was. Passed the lower house, passed the upper house. Then Malcolm Roberts, I think it was the cash ban. Malcolm Roberts got a whole heap of constitutional lawyers together, and they said, no, this cash is a legal tender. You can't put restrictions onto it. And so they took it to the Governor General, and the Governor General refused to sign it into effect. So then it was pushed back to the Legislative Council, the Senate, and then it got re-debated, and I think it just got killed, and it never went. So that's the whole reason we don't have the cash ban in Australia, is because the system got it right.
Yes, the system got it right, but that doesn't mean that that's the system that we need to have. And if we had a different system, that system wouldn't have had it right either. I mean, ultimately, in the US, they do have a system there where everything should be a check and balance on everything else. And the whole point behind the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is to protect individual sovereignty against the government. Now, what I would say is that if we ever feel that in order to get it right or to protect ourselves, we need as a country to go to the symbolic representative of the crown, how childish and undeveloped are we? I think that Australia is a good enough country to be able to stand on its own 2 feet and to resolve its issues internally. But it's incumbent upon the people to insist that government actually enact laws that protect individual people, rather than allowing government to do what it wants to do now, which at the moment, our government can do anything it wants to do There's nothing to stop it and this argument from government is that the government should not be restrained by anything. So Parliament can pass anything that it wants to pass, but it's also not obligated to do anything. And then people say, well, you have your rights because Australians are signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but so is every other country. So are we really going to suggest that a person who feels like their rights have been infringed on in Australia is supposed to take it to the Human Rights Commission? You think the Human Rights Commission is going to take up minor breaches of the law, like search and seizure laws and things like that?
Not when you got things like child slavery going on and stuff like that. They won't have time to handle little claims like that.
But those are major issues. But like, let's take something right. Western Australian standard practice, as you know, I did work for a contractor to the police department.
SHAK. Remember, this is streamed online.
Yeah, and I was a police trainer for a period of time in Western Australia. Now, one of the things that they do as standard practice is if you're arrested and you're required to give your fingerprints, they put a form in front of you and tell you that you have to sign the form consenting to take your fingerprints. Well, if you're required to take those fingerprints, if you're required to give your fingerprints anyway, why should you be forced to sign to say that you consent to it? But the standard response from police officers is, if you don't sign for it, we'll charge you with obstruction of justice. Well, hang on a second. I'm not consenting. I'm not signing to consent this. Like, you're asking me to sign to say that I consent to something. I'm not consenting to it, but I'm required to do it. It's like taxes, right? I don't know very many people who consent to it, who voluntarily say, yeah, come and take the money that I've earned, that I've busted my ass trying to earn, right? Most people don't consensually give their tax dollars over, but they're required to. So are you going to take that issue up with the Human Rights Commission? You shouldn't have to. You should be able to resolve the conflicts within Australia without relying on the Governor General or anybody else.
Yep. So ultimately, at some point, the power, someone has to take responsibility for it, and they've got to take, like, for example, the High Court is the highest court in Australia. That's where it stops. You can't go further than that. So
you can take it to the International Court.
Oh, does the International Court has actually authority to force Australia to do something?
Well, I don't know, theoretically, because like even say the United States, so if you really had a problem, you could take it to the International Court. If you did take it to the International Court and they made an adverse ruling against the country, generally speaking, the country will take that under advisement and change their rules. But two things on that. One, the country, if it didn't want to, the ability to force it is difficult, because really what you'd have to do then is have the international community sanction the country. And let's be honest, nobody's going to sanction Australia. Nobody's going to sanction the United States or Canada. Like, we're too powerful as countries, so it's just not going to happen. And our allies are too powerful. So, you know, the US is never going to sanction Australia no matter what we do, right? So that's one problem. The second problem is, if you have some sort of issue, it could be a minor infringement on your civil liberties. You're going to spend 20 or 30 years in court, mortgage your house, give up everything, dedicate your whole life to changing that particular thing. For what real payoff? You may have changed the law, but you're left impoverished as a result. I think most people would run out of steam, especially when it's something that's minor. And that's why I think with a Bill of Rights, it's much easier. I know the United States get criticized for this, but if you go into the US, you can go to the court and say at the first point, hey, my Fourth Amendment was breached. They didn't have the right to search me, or they didn't have the right to do this or that. And the evidence is thrown out. In Australia, we have rules that say things like, well, you should be protected against unlawful searches. But if, as a result of that unlawful search, the evidence is compelling, well, it can be admitted on application to the judge or the magistrate. Well, of course it's compelling, because they wouldn't be trying to use it otherwise. So what sort of bullshit rule is that? Either I have a protection against unlawful search and seizure, or I don't.
Oh, you don't love this one. This is going on to that one for you as well. So this is the reason I left Josh's comment up there. So Josh was a former UAP candidate in WA. Josh and I actually ran against each other, which is really funny. So at the time, WA passed, this is during COVID, it was the Mineralogy Amendment Bill, Iron Ore Processing Amendment Bill 2020. in it, it actually states that the WA, this is when Clive Palmer sued the state for $32 billion. And I can't stand Clive. I think he's a fat slug. But in saying that, he's still a human. He still has rights. And they amended this bill to state that the WA state government does not have any criminal or personal liabilities to the mineralogy executive, including, and they named Clive Palmer, and then they backdated it to 2012. And I'm thinking, how the fuck can the state government get away with legislating something like this without the federal government stepping in and saying, okay, guys, we let you get away with a heap of shit, but this has just gone way too far. Like, this is the sort of shit that's happening in WA. So I thought you would love this one. So
no, look, exactly. I think that, I didn't really want to see Clive Palmer walk away with $32 billion of the West Australian taxpayers' money. But, yeah, I don't think it's right to retrospectively enact a law that has an adverse effect on something. Clive didn't do anything wrong, right? He abided by the laws and made a big investment over there. He should have been able to bear the fruits of that. However, Liza Harvey, why she hitched her star to his wagon, I don't know, because clearly the people of Western Australia didn't want to see their tax dollars going to Clive. Also, I would say that in relation to mining, I actually think it's a pretty raw deal for West Australians and Australians in general, because you've got these big multinational mining companies who are shifting all of those profits offshore. Yep. And there's very little that actually comes back to Australia and Western Australia other than the wages that are paid, the very, very high wages that are paid to mining staff. But all the big profits are being made offshore, and profits are going to offshore shareholders. So we're getting a pretty raw deal on that. I'm not really one for big taxes, but maybe we should be saying to those mining companies that they need to contribute more of those profits to Australia before it's shipped offshore.
One of the things I think they're doing, I actually had a bit of a look in this one. They base I don't know if they call it royalties or taxes or whatever they pay. They base it off their profits, not off what's actually taken out of the ground. Where I think it's the Netherlands, they do it based off as it comes out of the ground. So even if the company only has a small profit, you still got to pay royalties, because effectively the minerals in our ground is owned by all Western Australians, and if it's in New South Wales, it's owned by New South Wales people and vice versa. So the royalties should be done per ton that's taken out of the ground, not by the profit from the things. Now, the mining companies should be actually, when they do their costings and everything, they should be basing it off knowing that they're going to pay X amount of royalties from what they take out of the ground. So yes, some projects won't get up because of it, but I think it's just a lot fairer system, and a lot more wealth will be coming to the state or the country that has the resources.
Well, this is what a lot of foreign countries do, and let's talk about some of those countries that we get told, okay, well, it's a tax-free country or whatever. So the UAE, which Dubai now is introducing taxes, but the UAE, Qatar, Saudi, etc., like all the Middle Eastern oil-producing countries, people look at them as being 0% tax countries, which they are on personal income, they are on capital gains and all those sorts of things. But they have a 50% tax on oil. That's how the government gets its money, because governments have to get their money from somewhere. I remember looking at I think it was a gold play, or it might have even been an oil play in Indonesia. And the deal was by the government was whatever you put in, whatever your investment in is, you can recover your investment. Once you've recovered your investment, it's a 50-50 split with the government of everything you pull out of the ground. Now, to be honest with you, I would support that if it led to a reduction in the amount of taxes paid by the people, or some other type of financial benefit to the people, because ultimately those resources belong to all of us. So we should all be able to benefit from it, more than what's just happening there. Now, Norway has a very interesting situation, because Norway has a lot of hydropower facilities. What they do in Norway, similar thing, you can recover whatever you've invested to build the hydropower facility. The electricity is then sold into the European common market, so it's transported across the lines and everything. And the deal, once again, is that half of that belongs to, or is credited to, the government, and then on top of that, you pay corporate taxes as well. Now, that seems like I'm advocating for very high taxes, which I don't generally. But when the asset that you're making money out of rightly belongs to the people collectively, I would prefer to see a higher tax than to see big multinational companies lobby government for exemptions, get the exemptions, and then shift all the profits offshore.
So that's why I'm still thinking I've always liked the user pay system, have a much higher GST, but drop out income taxes and all that sort of stuff, because you still don't make your money. It's just user pays. And that's why I'm thinking on the mining side of things, if you're taking our resources to make money, user pays. So you pay a royalty to the state or the governor, whichever one's in control, based on how much you're taking away from us. And I think that's just a much fairer system. So people can still make the money, the workers still get paid, and it's literally based on how much you take away from us.
Well, and there's enough profit left in it. I mean, you look at where people invest money. If you want almost bond-like returns, where you've got a pretty slow and steady return on your money, and not a lot of volatility in your investment value, one of the places that you will generally look at, of course, the market does change, and it's not always true. But one of the
this is not financial advice, so seek your own professional advice. I'm surprised I had to do that, and you didn't do it, Derek.
One of the places that you'll look at is utility companies, because utility companies, it's not like a tech company, right? You know what you're buying, and they're outputting a certain amount of utility. You know roughly how many customers are there, etc. So you know roughly what the returns are going to be. It's a reasonably slow and steady investment. It's not exciting like many other things in the share market is. So I don't see any reason why the argument that if you were to change the taxes of mining companies, it would curtail investment into those mining companies. I don't really think that holds true.
Or just have a look at international investments. It's still there, and they've got different rules. So,
but then again, I don't understand why we are shipping our iron ore off to foreign countries like China, getting it turned into steel, then bring it back to Australia, and then claiming that we can ship it over there. They can turn it to steel and ship it back, but we're doing the right thing by the climate. What are you talking about?
The one that, first of all, I think we need to make Australia producing again. So how you're saying, like, ship it over there, do the process and bring it back. But the other thing that I want to see a lot more of is you hear all these stories that the Seychelles, Canary Islands, there's all these tax havens in other countries for Australia. Why should Australians have to send their money offshore to get to a tax haven? Why can't they do it in Australia? I think Australia should be the tax haven for Australians to promote more investment back into Australia rather than investing in other countries.
Yeah, but Australia's not going to do that. And that's the thing, because the argument is, well, the rich should pay more in taxes. Or like Joe Biden in America, like, the rich should just pay their fair share. It's like, okay, cool. What is my fair share? Well, I'm not going to tell you. Well, we're paying all of the taxes as it is. So what do you mean by fair share? Like the top 10% of the United States pays 90% of the taxes. Yeah. And he's sitting there going, well, we want to, we just want the rich to pay their fair share. But it's easy to make that argument, right? And I hear that argument from a lot of people who, and I understand where they're coming from, who are doing it really tough in Australia. And they go, how is it that I'm struggling to feed myself, to, get a home that I can live in, to pay my rent? Maybe I'm 65 or 70 or something. I'm on the old age pension. And here I am. I've worked my whole life. I've raised a family. I'm trying to survive, and I'm not sure what the pension is now, $1,000 a fortnight or whatever it is. I'm getting $1,000 a fortnight. I'm paying $400 a week in rent. I'm left with $200 a fortnight to pay all my bills and food, etc. I don't have enough. Meanwhile, somebody else is making millions and millions of dollars. They should be paying more. I understand that argument, but the problem is that those people that are at the very top are not paying more. And even if you increase their tax rates, they're still not going to pay more, because oftentimes they're earning their money offshore, or they're earning their money in different ways. So all you would be doing is punishing some people who have high income, right, from earnings, a high salary, which is generally new money, as opposed to people who maybe have already got a lot. If you want to change the tax system and make it in some way progressive so that richer people are paying more, I don't necessarily oppose that, but I think it has to be fair. And when I say fair, it means that people in the same or similar economic positions should be contributing a similar amount. So
that's why I'm thinking a higher GSC, lower personal income tax is a much better way to do it because it's user pays. You want that $1 million car, you don't pay $1 million worth of GSC. Where if you're only buying a $20,000 car like a Toyota Corolla, then your GSC is only based on the value of the car, not on how much you earn.
look,
So I think it should be based on usage.
Look, I agree with an increase in the consumption tax. I think that consumption tax is a good idea. What you should have is a higher consumption tax and a higher tax on industries that cannot leave because they're exploiting the resources of the country. I think that that's fair and reasonable. And then people say to me, yeah, but that could add upward pressure on living costs for those people at the bottom. I agree with that. What you should do instead of having a progressive income tax is you should have a regressive benefit system, because ultimately it tends to be people, the people who are small business owners, the people that are doing quite well want less government in their lives. So those people can effectively opt out of the benefit system and start paying for their own things like international private health insurance, things like that. They can start doing that, opting out of the system, which is paid for by tax dollars. Those people that are relying on those services will have more government interference in their lives, which when they ask for socialism is what they are saying they want anyway.
Yep. So on that one, I think Derek's got a bail, so I'm going to wrap this one up. To Steve, great having you in the show. Josh again, and Michelle from earlier, great having you guys back in the chat. And obviously, when the show finishes, we do have these one-on-ones where we do talk about a few things that aren't normally covered. So make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and whatever those other buttons are, so just so you get notified when we are online. So from everyone here at Edge Radio, SHAK over in New Zealand, Derek over from just there. By the way, you're not in New Zealand, you're in America where everything's legal. All right, I'm done. Run. He's using a VPN to just put him somewhere else, so it's all good. So anyway, SHAK, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.